The question frankly surprised the interlocutor, since the answer to it was obvious. It was quite clear in the tone of his reply. "We're aliens. Isn't that what you call us?" He answered without hesitation and wanted to add something else, but Elena did not let him do it. She interrupted. "That's understandable. I wanted to clarify something else. Who are you? Who are you talking to right now?" There was a pause, as if the interlocutor was considering whether to tell the truth. Then he decided, "I am the AI of this ship." And it sounded so significant that Lena clearly realized that now this artificial intelligence, as she suspected, was really in charge of the Princess Ilseonora. As it seemed, he named the ship when he greeted her. Is there really no one else? Not artificial intelligences, but just intelligent ones, even if not humans, but reasonable ones? Now she was not afraid that her thoughts would be read, clutching a heavy cube in her hands. "It's not really convenient for me to call you that." Elena decided to sweeten the pill. "Can I call you Pavel Ivanovich?" "You copied the hologram from him, didn't you? That is, with me. Well, you get the idea. You look so much like him." She'd read somewhere that spacecraft AIs that have their own names are very proud of it, and she wasn't mistaken. "I'll only be pleased, Elena Yurievna." The already soft, calm voice softened even more. "Tell me, Pavel Ivanovich, are there any other intelligent people on the ship besides you?" Here she almost went too far, putting an artificially created individual, even if not an ordinary one, on a par with people. But the vain AI, who had just been given his own name, didn't seem to notice, or maybe he genuinely thought so. However, his answer came after a short pause. "Here and now there are more than 1,000 of my compatriots in cryocapsules who are waiting for me to deliver them to their homeland, and I have to do it. This is a matter of my honor." He paused for a moment and added somewhat sadly, "Oddly enough, but we also have our own concepts of honor." It is clear that he meant the AIs. Lena froze, trying to imagine if it would be possible to accommodate 1,000 people in such a ship. Although why human? And if they are twice, or even 3 times taller or wider than an ordinary earthling, it's not for nothing that they have such high doors. And the chairs were so capacious at first. Nevertheless, it turned out that it was possible if these capsules, like cells in an industrial hatchery incubator, were arranged in several rows in height. Pavel Ivanovich, meanwhile, continued with some slight sadness. "Elena Yurievna, you didn't get on our ship by accident, and perhaps you are our only chance to return home. I'm really counting on your help." He paused, then came to the main point, which Elena was secretly waiting for. "Let me tell you everything from the beginning. How, when, why, and so on." Lena had been waiting for this for 6 months, and of course, was ready to listen to this fascinating story, forgetting about food and sleep as much as necessary. But she couldn't forget about Max and Ivan. "Pavel Ivanovich," Elena began decisively, "why stand on ceremony if she's the only chance? I really want to listen to you. You can't even imagine how, but my friends were left behind, without whom I simply couldn't get on the ship. They're probably all exhausted by now, overexcited. It's been so long, and I'm still not here." She wanted to add that the guys would also like to hear a story about the adventures of an alien ship, especially since Ivan was the first to discover the ship, but the AI did not let her finish. "Elena Yurievna, there." It was clear from the tone that there was not the wing where Maxim and Vanya Medvedev were now. Nothing has changed. Time inside and outside the ship flows in completely different ways. How do you think I know your language, your customs? And I know a lot, if not everything, about your planet, which I had never seen before, or even knew about its existence. He paused, didn't wait for an answer, or maybe he assumed there wouldn't be one. "I know this from you, Elena Yurievna," he continued, as if not noticing that Elena literally opened her mouth in surprise. "Yes, honestly, and there was a reason. Or rather, thanks to you. As soon as you got on the ship, I immediately scanned your brain, and based on the data I received, I began to understand your language. Then it's easier. By that time, the repair droids had repaired the external scanners damaged during the disaster. Pavel Ivanovich seemed to stumble, then pulled himself together, just like a human, and continued. And I connected to your global network, what you call the internet. Now the information came straight from there, but there was so much of it that it took me a while to at least have a rough idea of your planet. In order to have a normal dialogue with you, and at the same time not burden you with delays, I had to know the political structure of your planet, its social, technological potential, geography, and everything else. That's why I had to speed up the time here, then slow down a bit. He looked with a slight smile at the astonished Lena, for whom the possibility of speeding up time in some limited area was beyond comprehension. Yes, Elena Yurievna, don't be surprised. It really is. Our civilization is so ancient, by the way, as they say in your fantasy novels, that we can collapse space, change time, possess, as you have seen, mental abilities, and can teleport. He paused. Under certain conditions. We can do a lot of things. Elena was about to ask a question that was already on the tip of her tongue. If you're as powerful as you describe, why haven't you flown away yet? There's nothing stopping you now. There is no barrier in the form of multi-ton layers of Earth from above, and your spaceship does not seem to have been damaged externally, but it held on at the last moment. So there are reasons that she doesn't know about yet. Lena smiled to herself that cherished bye again. There were so many of them on the way here, and the answers were gradually being found. This will also become clear. Pavel Ivanovich apparently caught this momentary change in the mood of the interlocutor, although outwardly, apart from an ironic smile, it is not clear what or to whom it was referring. It did not manifest itself in any way. We are from the planet Solia, which is the central, one might say, the capital planet of the vast empire of Turan, which includes 126 inhabited planets, and representatives of the most diverse races live there. I'm not afraid to say they live in peace and harmony. He paused and added, for the most part. Besides them, there are several dozen rather harsh planets where only mining is carried out, and there is no permanent population, only workers. You call it the shift method. There are several planets with very difficult climatic conditions, as you would say, prison planets for violators of the laws of the empire. Don't be surprised. They're only sent there for very serious crimes. Most often, these are attempts at a coup d'etat, assassinations of members of the imperial family or senior officials of our empire. Moreover, criminals are given the right to choose the planet where they will spend the rest of their lives. Someone prefers a planet with a harsh, frosty climate, like your Antarctica, while someone, on the contrary, with a hot and very dry one, like your Sahara. There are also planets completely covered with tropics, with warm, mild climates and seas, but it is much more difficult to survive on them than on others because of the very aggressive animal and plant world. But someone prefers to go here. This is the kind of complex public education we have. As in any other empire, no matter how good the emperor is to his subjects, there will always be... Here the AI thought for a second, trying to find a more precise synonym, but failed. Let's turn to your earthly categories. There will be people who want a little more. Some have power, some have money, some have freedom, especially for those who already have enough power, money, and everything else. But I want more. To change the situation in their favor, they try to arrange conspiracies, organize coups, and so on. Over the last millennium, such attempts have been made 3 times. Everything, of course, with a pre-assumed end. To make a coup in the empire, to change the political system, is almost impossible. But attempts to get rid of the emperor or people from his inner circle who influence state policy and replace them with their own henchmen in order to have certain preferences were made more often. And the fact that we ended up here on your planet, according to the results of my analysis, as you put it, post factum, the AI decided to show off its erudition, is the result of just such another intervention by opposition forces. However, a completely different scheme was used now, and the organizers' intelligence is to be envied. They refused attempts to directly physically eliminate the emperor or members of the imperial family, senior officials, because they are guarded very professionally. They are planning a grandiose worldwide blackmail. Here, the ship's AI, who had just received his own name, confirmed that he had received it for a reason. Maybe, of course, ethical standards were embedded in the program, but he behaved completely humanly, which could not but surprise Lena. "Aren't you tired, Elena Yurievna?" the greenish cavalier asked sympathetically. "Maybe we should take a short break." Lena, who never for a second forgot about her friends waiting for her on the street, refused. "No, you don't need any breaks." She certainly believed Pavel Ivanovich that time outside the ship practically stood still, but she still doubted it. That's why she was rushing things. "Then a glass of refreshing drink," suggested the interlocutor. "After all, it's night outside," he said in a completely mundane voice, "and you haven't slept a second." He remained seated, smiling, and a small metal steward on wheels appeared silently in one of the doors of the hall, resembling a Japanese robot, which Lena had seen more than once in documentaries and feature films, with a tray in his hand. On the tray is a tall transparent glass on a thin stem with a yellow-brown liquid that resembles cognac in color, but really smells like some kind of fruit drink. After just a couple of sips, Lena felt a receding heaviness in her head and an incredible ability to work. She held the glass in her hand and thought, "Do they drink from glasses too? Just like us?" "Yes, and the robot looks like an earthly one. Why did he say, referring to the AI, that it was too early for me to see their true form?" Obviously, her doubts were reflected on her face, and Pavel Ivanovich was a good psychologist, or he walked through her mental field again. After all, Elena left the block cube on the table for a second when she picked up a glass. "Elena Yurievna, this glass has been synthesized especially for you to make it more convenient for you. We don't use such dishes. We have a slightly different anatomical structure, but food and other atomic assembly synthesizers are among the best in the galaxy. Shall we continue?" Lena, who hadn't even thought about sleeping, even though the night was really going to end soon, felt much better after taking the synthesized tonic and turned to hearing again. "I understood from your global network that there are many different competitions, contests, all kinds of tournaments and Olympiads on the planet, both among adults and among young people. We have that too. But there is some difference. You have all this held under the auspices of various federations and associations, and at different times, in different places. Residents will also learn about the winners of tournaments from the media at different times. Today, there are winners in sports, in a month." Here the AI paused to remind once again that he uses terrestrial categories. Winners are vocalists. In 6 months, who is the best among musicians, and so on. We have about the same thing on each of the planets, but once every 100 years the finals of all planetary competitions are held on Celia, after which you can immediately find out about the winners in different fields, and immediately find out about the best people in the empire. And according to a long-standing tradition, there are exactly 1,000 of them. Here the AI hesitated again, not knowing what to call his compatriots, but then he seemed to give up, or whatever they had, and finished, "A human." "Then he got better," Tarantsev said. Lena frowned thoughtfully. "Once in 100 years? How long do they live then?" Which was not lost on Pavel Ivanovich. He seemed to read her mind again, even though Elena had the cube in her hand. 100 years, Elena Yurievna, is not such a long time for us. This is exactly the age when teenagers become boys and girls. That is, here, on Celia, after the finals of all possible contests, tournaments, competitions, and Olympiads, you can immediately see the entire color of the nation, its hopes, its future. That's what the conspirators took advantage of. I can't put another word to them. According to a long-standing tradition, all winners of interplanetary tournaments spend the next month, by your earthly standards, on our Pearl, the planet Aurea. This is a purely resort planet, where there is no industry, no industries, no aggressive flora and fauna. There is only a mild climate, warm seas with sandy beaches, the sun, clean air and natural products, and not holograms and synthesized products, which is found on many other planets. That's where the winners of the youth competitions go to celebrate their victory, get to know each other better, and finally relax after intense, hard training and classes. After all, in the near future, they will have to replace their elders in those areas that they have chosen as their area of expertise. Lena even admired the AI's ability to use such stilted, down-to-earth turns of speech. And since Pavel Ivanovich based his knowledge of the language, as he claimed, on mento-scanning Elena's knowledge, she was even a little surprised. Was she really saying that? Meanwhile, this Turanian rhetorician, not at all embarrassed, continued. This time, after the competition, it was decided to send the winners to Aurea on the pleasure yacht of our princess, Ilsionora, who also took part in the competition among dancers and became its winner. No, Elena Yurievna, it was a fair victory. He tried to anticipate her doubts. The princess deserves it. How the conspirators found out about the desire of the tournament organizers to send the winners on the yacht of the princess is unknown. They planned to attack the ship, capture it along with all the flower of the nation, and then, obviously, lay out their prepared demands to the emperor. Of course, these are just my assumptions. I don't have all the information, but I think that's how it was. Despite the fact that the yacht, because it was carrying a member of the imperial family, was escorted by 2 frigates, it was attacked upon exiting hyperspace after a jump that took only 3 of your Earth days. We realized this as soon as we arrived at the exit point. As usual, first one of the frigates went into the jump, then the yacht with the winners of the tournaments, then the second frigate. At the exit, from where Aurea was only 3 days away on main engines, our small squadron was already waiting. When we came out of hyperspace, the picture was terrifying. Our frigate was engaged in a battle with 2 ships, one of which was a battleship. And you know, after all, the power and fate of the frigate seems to have been decided. There was no way to contact him, nor to report the situation to either the Empire or the second escort frigate. The opponents had installed a powerful jammer. In addition, there were marks on the radars of 2 more ships coming out of hyperspace towards us, the class of which was still difficult to establish. The second frigate, following us, was also going to attack. Since we still had the opportunity to maneuver, since no one attacked the Princess Ilsionora, they left us for sweets. We could only run away, which we did. Knowing that any ship can be tracked by an inversion trail even in hyperspace, our captain, saving the princess and all our youth elite, the future of our country, for the first time used a combination of space and time warping, trying to throw future pursuers off the scent. And he had no doubt that they would be. Previously, such tactics were practiced only with the use of changing one parameter, either time or space. But as reality has shown, the risk of being discovered in this case remained. The captain tried to rule out any possibility of our capture and went for it. That's how we ended up here, near your planet, which none of us knew about. Even me, a 7th-generation AI. Lena realized that on the one hand, the 7th generation was cool, but on the other hand, Earth was located somewhere in the back of the galaxy, or maybe in a completely different place than the one from which the fugitives from the Turan Empire had come. The AI, meanwhile, continued. After coming out of the jump near your planet, we decided to take refuge here. Our captain realized that jumping experiments with 2 parameters at once, time and space, could take us so far away that it would be very difficult to get out of there. It was very difficult to get out even from here, where we were. It takes time to calculate the route and schedule of a jump in hyperspace. Moreover, to begin with, in order to analyze, justify, and build them, it would be nice to find out where we are. From here, it's time to dance. And we didn't have time, because the speed of any warship is an order of magnitude higher than that of our pleasure yacht.
Therefore, we could not stay in orbit, as there was a very high risk that the pursuers would be here at any moment if the empaths helped. Well, to detect our princess with the help of military scanners, even if we hide in the shadow of the planet, as you say, is a matter of technique.
The captain decided to land the ship on the planet and lay low if possible. There we could cover ourselves with a force shield and, with the help of our battle droids, even if we were discovered, try to repel the assault of the orbital landing force.
Fortunately, a warship cannot land on a planet. It can only use an orbital elevator to drop troops on the planet, and not a small one at that. But it's better for us anyway than trying to fight off a boarding party in space. Our power shield will be crushed there in a few seconds, and they definitely won't bomb the Princess Ilsionora on Earth from space. They need us alive.
Our battle droids, even though there are only 2 of them, are representatives of the 6th generation, which is cool. And the anti-boarding team on the yacht is not weak, not like the army. After all, this is the yacht of a princess, a member of the imperial family. The other ships have droids of only the 5th generation so far. They are weaker than ours. Here the AI paused for a second, appreciated Lena's ability to perceive information, which increased many times after taking the tonic, was satisfied, and continued, starting with a question. Can you imagine what a regiment is? Is there a regular mechanized regiment in your army? By the nature of her profession, Elena, of course, came across such concepts and had a general idea of the army and its structure, which she confirmed with a silent nod. So, Elena Yurievna, Pavel Ivanovich continued with some bragging, our 6th generation combat droid can easily destroy your entire mechanized regiment along with its tank and missile components. So it would be more profitable and easier for us to defend ourselves on the planet. The captain chose a valley between 2 mountain ranges for landing. It would be much more difficult to find us here than anywhere on the plain, in the steppe. Circling the planet, we scanned it in all the ranges available to us and established for sure that there was no intelligent life here. That's when Lena gasped, to herself, of course, and tried to mentally count when these aliens from Turan ended up on Earth. She also remembered that the first people on Earth appeared about 200,000 years ago. Australopithecus can hardly be called intelligent, even though he could hold a stick in his hand, but the next ones after him are a skilled person, and then Homo sapiens itself. These are already intelligent, without question. So the ship had been lying in the ground for more than 200,000 years. And it looks like new. And here, in the cabin, the birds are singing, the streams are murmuring, and the drinks are cool, but not spoiled at all. My stomach doesn't hurt. And it seems like everyone is alive in cryo capsules. Her thoughts were racing again, unable to come to terms with the conclusions. Pavel Ivanovich seemed to appreciate her doubts, but did not interfere and tell something about it. He still had a lot to tell, but he made a kind of lyrical digression from the main military plot. Do you want to see what your planet looked like at that time? Lena found the strength to nod her head again in silence. The huge screen on the opposite wall of the unloading hall lit up, and at first Elena saw a small ball against a dark, almost black screen. There were no twinkling stars around. As its size increased, it was possible to see individual blurred spots of blue and white, then even some kind of large, elongated red-brown spot that did not resemble any of the known continents. But the green color of forests and steppes, as Lena expected, was not visible for a long time. She figured that the blue color was water, and the white color was most likely clouds, which made it impossible to recognize the mainland with its mountain ranges. Anyway, there were no familiar shapes to be seen, and the ball was getting closer and closer. Now it took up almost the entire screen with its upper edge and its movement slowed down a little. Here it was already possible to see oceans with a well-defined coastline and mountain ranges, sometimes stretching along the shores, and sometimes among the red-brown wrinkled, foam-like surface of the earth. Lena noticed lightning flashing in a couple of places, alternating bright crimson flashes that changed their color to white-yellow and then dark without clear boundaries. "It's probably some kind of thunderstorm and volcanic eruption," she thought. But still, a saturated white-blue or bluish color prevailed, sometimes with very clear contours, and sometimes blurred and gradually lost against the background of new spots appearing. The green color was also present on the planet, but somehow not in the amount we would like. Were there ice ages by that time or not? Thought Lena frantically, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't remember. Then the footage was taken, apparently, by some kind of atmospheric aircraft, some kind of reconnaissance drone. The high mountains with their steep and sharp peaks still stretched in an endless ridge, but they could be seen quite clearly, and not in the form of a blurred red-brown stripe. In places, there were even some large fragments of rocks that had once rolled down and formed the most bizarre clusters here, resembling giant geometric shapes, balls, cubes, pyramids, and many other things that were difficult to name. At the foot of the mountains, small green groves of huge trees could be seen more and more often, which, climbing the slopes, became smaller and gradually turned into dense shrubs. Even from this height, from where the drone was shooting, one could only assume the gigantic size of the trees in the lowlands, although there was simply nothing to compare them with. The trees were shaped like terrestrial cypresses, wide at the bottom, where the trunks were several girths thick at the base, and gradually, like a pyramid, narrowed to the top. There were also trees nearby that looked somewhat like modern palm trees, only their trunks were an amazing red color, and the branches, like an inverted umbrella, were open to the tops. Finally, the scout jumped over a mountain range and flew over a completely green plain with tall, dense grass, among which blue spots of lakes glittered. Here, too, not particularly dense thickets of trees rose in places, sometimes merging into quite extensive forests, densely intertwined with vines. And somewhere on the horizon loomed the broken line of a large body of water, the opposite shore of which could hardly be distinguished. Here, the drone taking pictures decreased even more, and its speed dropped noticeably. In some places, he just hung out, trying to capture the most interesting things on Earth. And there was a lot to see. On the banks of a huge river, where sandy and muddy areas alternated with low ledges overgrown with dense bushes, turning into vast coastal plains overgrown with tall, juicy grass, about 50 animals, vaguely resembling modern hippos, frolicked. Their size was impressive, no less than our hippos, but the muzzle resembled a hippopotamus only remotely. It was not square, as Elena imagined it should be, but rather stretched forward, like a wild boar or a pig. Most of them, terrifying their neighbors, opened their mouths wide with huge fangs, jostled in the shallow water. Others slowly strolled along the shore or lay in the mud here, and someone leaned towards a small grove, near which a lake could be guessed, mostly overgrown with some kind of bright green vegetation. Here, with their nickels, they undermined the branchy roots of the reeds growing in abundance along the edge of the lake and ate them with gusto. The delicacy was so delicious that these huge gourmets did not notice anything or anyone around. And who could threaten such giants, especially in the places of their natural, habitual habitat? A minute later, the drone hovering over the herd shifted slightly to the side, flew around the grove, and showed the one who wanted and could do it from above. The spotted red back of the beast hiding in the grass could only be seen from above. The thick and tall grass reliably hid it from view from the ground. It is clear that he hid, not to hide from the fattening hippos, but on the contrary, hoping to get close to them and attack them. Here, one of the hippos walked away from his friends at the meal, and stepping heavily with his bulbous legs, went straight to the hidden predator, which did not reveal itself until the last. And only when the giant, sensing something, stopped, trying to catch an unfamiliar scent, the spotted hunter soared off the ground and rushed with huge leaps to the intended victim. It was a predator similar to a huge cat, reddish-brown with black spots on its back and sides, turning into small transverse stripes on its legs. 2 huge fangs protruded from the typically feline mouth, extending beyond the lower jaw. The ancient hippopotamuses also had impressive fangs, perhaps even more so than those of the emerging hunter, but they hid in their mouths. But they had much less courage. Despite almost 3 times the mass, the fan of roots abruptly turned around and with amazing speed rushed towards the river, which he considered his home, ready to shelter the fugitive from any misfortunes. His relatives, instead of coming to the aid of a fellow man in trouble, scattered. Those who were in shallow water or near the shore hurried to the middle of the river and instantly disappeared under the water. Several individuals ran from the grove to the saving pond, but trying to get as far away as possible from the predator chasing the game. And in just 2 giant leaps, he overtook his potential prey, fell and precisely glued himself to the victim's back, clutching his claws into the thick and dense hide, and with huge teeth into the neck just behind the back of the beast's head. Then he arched his back and, leaning back, abruptly lowered his head with terrifying force, with dagger fangs protruding from his upper jaw, which easily penetrated such a powerful defense. Time after time, the monster's head sank, which sought to inflict wounds on the sides of the neck, where the skin was weaker and there were more large vessels. At first, the pain only spurred the hippopotamus on. He ran even faster, matching a racehorse, although his massive legs were very short. The predator, undeterred, continued his bloody work, and the wounds on the hippopotamus's neck rapidly increased. At first, the blood ran faster, flooding the victim's skin, and then splashed up in a powerful fountain, flooding the saber-toothed creature's muzzle. With her dagger-shaped fangs, she had damaged some major vital artery. With each jolt of the outgoing blood, the herbivorous giant's strength left him. His running slowed down, his legs began to stumble, his body began to sway, falling to the sides, and already on the very shore the hippopotamus stopped, looked longingly at his native element, where he wanted to get rid of his tormentor, but could not, and collapsed heavily on the sand. At that moment, the predator lifted its blood-soaked muzzle up, and its mouth opened in a kind of smile, which almost made Lena sick. The next second, the screen went blank, and she breathed a sigh of relief. Yeah, it's a pretty good picture, not for the faint of heart. The AI seemed to be smiling, if AIs could smile at all. His voice was tinged with similar emotions at first, but then it became drier, because the events he began to talk about could not cause any smile. Literally an hour after landing, according to your Earth standards, the captain, along with the boarding crew and both battle droids, went on a reconnaissance mission. It was necessary to explore the area as quickly as possible and evaluate ways to use it, choose the most optimal locations for droids and teams before the upcoming combat operations in order to inflict optimal damage to the enemy. It was impossible to land directly on the yacht. Although the yacht did not have heavy weapons, there were several small-caliber plasma cannon turrets, and they could destroy the landing force while still in the air. Therefore, it was worth waiting for the enemy somewhere to the side. On his orders, I blocked the entrance and activated the power shield. We were constantly in touch. Everything that the captain saw later, I saw. The captain did not neglect my abilities, and often used my tips, Pavel Ivanovich said with some pride. Half an hour later, an incomprehensible tremor of the earth suddenly appeared, accompanied by a rumble. Then the earth, and with it our ship, began to rock, as in a severe storm. Then there was a powerful jolt, from which some of our passengers fell to the floor, and those who were lying were thrown up. The champions and winners of the tournaments were confused, did not understand anything, and just rushed around the ship, trying to hold on to any solid support during the tremors. A second later, another, more terrifying one followed, then another, and another. I managed to strengthen our defenses and tried to hide some of the external sensors, as we found ourselves in total darkness. Suddenly, a terrible roar was heard, magnified many times by acoustic sensors, drowning out everything. There was a crackle, and the connection to the captain's group disappeared. The broadcast image has also disappeared. In those few seconds from the start of the earthquake to the termination of communication, it was possible to see first the sharp fluctuations of everything and everything around, then a massive rockfall rushing from somewhere above directly at the frozen captain. The earth rumbled dully and was agitated all the time. She seemed to be moaning. Only after a few minutes, which seemed like an eternity, no matter how banal it sounds, everything calmed down. And the trembling, and the vibrations, and the crackling, and the rumbling, everything stopped. There was an amazing silence that could not have been imagined on the surface of the planet, where many acoustic sensors were installed to monitor the surrounding space. There was no sound of wind, no rustle of crumbling stones, no rustle of leaves, though not numerous, but still trees growing here. No way. All attempts to contact the captain and his team were unsuccessful. None of the external sensors, no matter how hard we tried, provided any information. Only the information from the force shield indicated that he was under serious pressure, and that it would be like death to remove him. We realized that we were buried under a huge rock mass that collapsed as a result of an earthquake. All our attempts to free ourselves were destroyed by this wild, merciless, and senseless force, which was impossible to resist even with our abilities. Here the AI took a pause, obviously once again remembering everything that happened, as if it were yesterday, and not many, many years ago. In any case, his green holographic face became gloomy and thoughtful. He seems to be worried, Lena thought, assessing the state of the silenced artificial intelligence. Probably, he still has some kind of emotional component, and it's not surprising. Anyone would be worried here. But this is still a 7th-generation AI, and even with its own name. After a minute, Pavel Ivanovich smoothed out the deep wrinkles on his translucent face and continued. We could stay in this position for a long time. By the way, our reactor is also of the 7th generation, he casually emphasized. But by doing so, even casually, he put himself on a par with this miracle. He himself is also of the 7th generation, could ensure the normal functioning of the ship even by our standards for a very long time. But here it was only necessary to maintain vital activity inside. You don't have to fly anywhere. You don't have to maneuver. You don't have to jump into hyperspace over and over again. You don't have to fight with anyone. The only problem was the passengers. There were too many of them. Of course, we had food modules, and we had a good supply of cartridges for them. But who knows how long we will spend in such a helpless state. After weighing the pros and cons, as you say, we decided to put all sentient beings into suspended animation, where they can stay without significant harm to their bodies for as long as the reactor is running. It was the right decision. More than 1,000 intelligent people in a small enclosed space without any immediate prospects for liberation, and besides, they don't know each other very well. This is a serious test for the psyche, and how it could end, no one could say. And there, who knows? Maybe another earthquake will set us free, or will our brethren still find the trail? At that time, we couldn't expect to be freed by someone from a planet that didn't even have intelligent life. After that, I turned off all auxiliary systems, even my AI assistants, except for the one responsible for the operation of the life support system. Pavel Ivanovich drew attention to Elena's puzzled look and explained, Besides me, there are almost a dozen other AIs here with a narrower specialization. There is an AI responsible for the cryocapsule life support system. There is for medical care on the ship as a whole, an AI storekeeper, cook, and others. There is an AI responsible for the operation of main engines and anti-grav. Then the main AI seemed to stumble. Or rather, it was. Lena gradually cheered up after such an almost real encounter with the saber-toothed creature, and has already regained her ability to think and analyze. That's it! She instantly reacted to the sad statement of the AI. There was an AI. There was, and she, as it was said in the beginning, the only chance. So she has to return this AI. So was it stolen or something? And who? Elena didn't notice herself as she was discussing the current situation. She released a thought blocker cube and automatically rolled it with her hands on the table. Of course, Pavel Ivanovich did not fail to take advantage of this gift, although he himself suggested that Lena hide her thoughts. Elena Yurievna, he said, putting as much respect as possible into his words. This is not the first time that you have admired me for your analytical abilities and ability to draw the right conclusions. You're right. We won't be able to leave this planet without a properly functioning AI for main engines and anti-grav. After waiting so long for the opportunity to free myself from this monstrous captivity, I managed to calculate where we were as a result of our captain's experiments. This is not to condemn, and it's not for me to judge a reasonable person. At that time, it was the only right decision, and it wasn't his fault that such a terrible earthquake had happened. It's more my fault that I couldn't have predicted this disastrous set of circumstances. If it hadn't been for the intervention of your fellow citizens, whom I carelessly launched onto the ship, hoping for normal contact with representatives of another civilization, we would have left long ago. But what happened happened. Your tribesmen were unable to make contact. None of them had at least minimal mental abilities, did not know how to communicate mentally. And at that time I did not know your language, and I could not communicate with them in the usual way. I tried to attract their attention by showing signs and symbols on the screen in the wheelhouse that any reasonable person in the universe could understand. But I was faced with the primitiveness of logic and limited thinking. Significant differences in the level of development of minds and the emotional imbalance of a person affected. It's probably easier for you to see what happened and how it all ended, he concluded. Elena found it unpleasant to listen to the unflattering statements of someone else's mind about her fellow tribesmen. The primitiveness of logic, the limitations of thinking. At least he didn't just call them morons. It's not their fault that they don't have a mind connection. She didn't know about her mental abilities until recently either. Although, on the other hand, the FSB officers did not rush here to establish contact with aliens, but to profit from something useful. That's for sure. Otherwise, there would be completely different specialists here, from somewhere in the Academy of Sciences. What if soldiers or nerds really stole the marching AI? Still not better. Lena thought about it, clutching the heavy cube tightly in her hand, regaining control of herself. Still, it's better if someone else can't read your mind. An airlock chamber appeared on the newly lit screen, part of the wall of which flickered in the projection of the entrance hatch, veiled in a haze, and then disappeared. Take 2. The view from the inside. Nothing happened for a long time. Then a man appeared in the doorway, not in camouflage, but in a real UGC, although his hands were clutching a machine gun, not some kind of dosimeter. A gray-green combined arms protective suit combined with a gas mask could easily protect its wearer from toxic substances, some biological agents, and radioactive dust, but only if it was all of terrestrial origin. No one knew what could be brought from another world, and whether UGC could help in this case, but the suit was still used. Instructions are instructions. The man carefully took a few steps, looked around, looked out first through one door, then the other, saw nothing dangerous, and said into a headset hidden under a gas mask or into some kind of built-in microphone. Clear! It was probably difficult to hear the voice under the gas mask, and even from a distance, but most likely, Pavel Ivanovich helped hear. In any case, Elena heard all the subsequent monologues and dialogues quite clearly. A few seconds later, several people appeared in the airlock in the same equipment and with the same machine guns in their hands. I must say that these were not the usual AK, but something new from the equipment of the special services, small and similar to a folding portable pencil case. When there were about a dozen of them, the person who came in last gave the command to split up and sent the groups to different doors. No amateur activity, he admonished the soldiers. Only an inspection to identify possible problems and collect information. In case of a clear threat, nevertheless, try not to engage in a clash, but to withdraw. Everyone should be on the wave, but don't clog the airwaves. Keep in touch with me. All the pictures from your cameras will go to me and to the center. They will tell us what and how. Everything else is a matter for our nerds. Lena was amazed that here, among the military, scientists are called the same as in real life. The ship's cameras didn't show anything interesting for a couple of minutes. Corridors, soldiers covering each other, more corridors, ceiling lights of an unusual ellipsoid shape lighting up as people moved, more soldiers. Empty doorways to some cabins or service rooms could not be seen, and the soldiers soon gathered again in the airlock, which was quite spacious. The head of the reconnaissance group, and it was she, reported to the center, which he casually mentioned that, "Everything is clear, you can launch." Who to launch became clear after another minute. People dressed in the same UGC appeared in the doorway, only not with machine guns in their hands, but with a variety of devices. These were the notorious nerds. There was obviously a break in filming the gradual expansion on the part of the FSB, as Lena saw the same soldiers and scientists, but without protective equipment. The commandos were in camouflage with the same machine guns, but the scientists were already in civilian clothes, but most of them even wore white coats. A light path lit up in the hallway of one of the doors, which at one time led Elena to the room where she was calmly watching documentaries of the very recent past. Following the yellow square fireflies, most of the nerds and several accompanying soldiers set off along the path, led by the commander, the one who gave the commands in the first episode of the instructive movie. The entire large team gathered in the control room, where a large number of instruments were located. Some of them resembled those of Earth, while others were completely unlike anything known. In the center, in front of an armchair that vaguely resembled the chair where Elena was sitting now, there were several tall cabinets, on each of which lay a device somewhat similar to an Earth laptop, but of an amazing yellow color. Some of the yellow suitcases were closed, and the central one was flashing with an open panel, where some symbols were slowly alternating. Elena did not manage to examine them in detail. The invited guests were so closely surrounded by the stand with the device. Lena guessed from the indistinct hum of voices, the flickering in front of the screen, and the sweeping gestures that the Earthlings could not understand something from the pictures shown. One of the researchers turned on a video camera, trying to film everything on display, but the commander of the guards crossed it all out with a single gesture. He pointed at the panel to one of his subordinates, made several rotating gestures with his index finger. "That's it. Take it with you. Our specialists will figure it out there. Tomorrow we will call AT specialists from Moscow. It's just right for them." Weak attempts by scientists who tried to resist this were severely suppressed. The commander looked at them with a bit of malicious irony. "And if the door doesn't open tomorrow?" Wandering the corridors again, kissing the walls. "No. If anything, we'll put everything back in its place." Here he probably remembered Guy Dye's unfading film. Then, one day, half of it. And he laughed at his own witticism, which seemed so successful to him. The device, oddly enough, was easily disassembled. The cables that fitted were easily removable, just like those of an Earth computer. Along with the device, which displayed incomprehensible symbols, the guards took away two more similar ones that stood on neighboring cabinets. Then the screen went blank. The silence in the hall lasted for quite a long time. Perhaps the AI was giving Elena time to assess everything that had happened, but she could not give an unambiguous assessment of whether her compatriots had acted well or badly. Maybe they will really return everything, although I doubted it myself. These 3 devices, even 2, are the stumbling block for our departure. One of them is an AI for controlling main engines and anti-gravity. The second is a small AI for controlling repair droids. The problem is that all the ship's repair droids are assigned to it, and if it were in place, we could easily replace the lost first AI with a backup one. It's impossible to do this without him. I need to reassign the repairman to me, but I can't do it myself. There are no manipulators, he joked bitterly, spreading his holographic arms to the sides. And you, Elena Yurievna, are unlikely to succeed. And I can't wake up my fellow tribesmen for that either. The third device is just an AI that coordinates the cryocapsules. On our other ships, all systems are duplicated for reliability, and more than once. But the Princess Ilseonora is a pleasure yacht that has never left our planets. So there was no such need here. And that's what came of it. Lena didn't know what to answer, and the pause dragged on a bit. Then, Pavel Ivanovich nevertheless announced the upcoming role of Elena as a last chance, which he has already mentioned twice. Elena Yurievna, we need to return the AIS to the ship. I can't do this without you and your friends. It's easy for me to destroy all life around me, but it won't help to revive the ship. It is impossible to take off without these 2 AIs. You are the only reasonable person who knows about our trouble. I have no one else to turn to. Yes, now I know your language and can communicate with other people. But will they understand me? I don't mean the Russian language at all. Or will they just want to cash in on our misfortune? They will require preferences. Yes, we can synthesize both the gold and precious stones that you value so much and pay for it. But there is a problem. Our reactor, which has been operating for so long, and the exhausting supporting force shield, is, if not on the verge of exhaustion, then somewhere close. As soon as we were freed from this gigantic load of Earth, I immediately turned it off. I allowed the reactor to rest before pumping energy for the upcoming jumps. And now I have to think and evaluate my every step in terms of energy consumption. And synthesizers consume a lot of it. That's the paradox. By the way, we also synthesized most of the cryocapsules, which also costs energy. I've known you for a long time. You could say since childhood. Lena realized that he was referring to her childhood reasoning and feelings after mento scanning. I know all your thoughts, and I know that you are a good person. And you, like no one else, understand me. After all, there are 1,000 of our children here on the ship, the color and hope of our civilization. From space, we can easily get back to the time we left. I can do it now. I've figured out the coordinates. But to move, you need to at least get into the orbit of your planet. Pavel Ivanovich became very serious, which was noticeable on his face, got up from his chair, and very solemnly pronounced the final phrase of his revelation monologue. I'm asking for your help on behalf of the entire Turan Empire, from all of our 126 planets. Lena, extremely moved by the confession of an alien mind, imagined herself in his place for a second, and she had no doubts left. Pavel Ivanovich, she replied excitedly, and no less solemnly. I will do everything I can to make you fly away safely. She paused and added, to make your kids live up to your expectations.